Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour, sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing, and that's Badass Wood Art. Remember to use promo code CT Pocket for 20% off any one item at that'sbadasswoodart.com. And while you're here, like and subscribe. We're doing a giveaway at 3,000 subscribers, a custom Skol piece by That's Badass Wood Art. So hit that like and subscribe button and be sure to be entered. So today we're joined by the clickbait officer, executive producer, a man of many titles. It's Declan Goff of Skor North. How are you this evening?
Boys, I'm doing good. I was explaining you off the mic, the mustache. So the mustache officer is unofficial right now. We were both chatting about like what's the state of like pedophile mustaches, right? Is it has the mustache jumped the shark of like, no, that's fine. And is it actually the goatee that has kind of become the number one draft pick, if you will, of questionable facial of creepy? Yeah.
Yes.
So luckily that is not the case. I'm just rocking the stash, and we'll see how much longer I keep it.
I think you should keep it for a while. I think it. I told you on Instagram, I was like, gives me Ted Lasso vibes. Like,
I can see it.
There's a confidence about it.
Well, hold on. He doesn't have a lasso stash. I mean, let's be real here.
Hey,
he's got to grow it out a little bit more, get a little thicker. Yeah, but you're well on your way, Goff.
I'm getting there. Yeah. I'm getting there. I'll try. I'd love the lasso positivity, so I'll do my absolute best there.
There you go.
Just hit the sign on your way out, believe, and we'll be good. Wanted to bring you on. I was talking to Ryan before you hopped on. I know you did a recording for us, but I think this is your first time on our show. So welcome, and let's talk about the Vikings.
Yeah, man.
That you talk about the most. There was news that it's not news, but speculation today about the Vikings potentially being a dark horse in trading up to the number 3 overall pick.
Which seems ridiculous, obviously. I mean, and this was who put that out again?
Josh Norris. So what do you think, Declan? Are you somebody that's like, let's swing for the fences like the Timberwolves did with Gobert and see how that works? Or are you more of like, let's see who falls and then kind of make a move? Because if they go that high, it's quarterback or bust.
So actually, if it's on the Gobert factor, well, who's the sucker that can give the Vikings like 4 first-round picks for Kirk Cousins? That's what I would be more interested. I'd be much more interested in offloading it if someone wants to be if Kirk Cousins can be the Rudy Gobert for another team to get 4 guys. So number 3 is aggressive. I've seen some, and we've done some mocks or some ideas from others that had them going up to maybe 9 or 10. And even if maybe one of these quarterbacks like Will Levis gets to 16 or 17, going up 5 spots is a lot more doable and achievable than going up into the top 10, let alone the top 3. So I'm full disclosure, I am not a mock draft like expert guy. I find that entire industry fascinating, like what Thor and what Tyler and Schefter and all these guys do with draft film and prospects. I think it's incredible because I just don't know, as much as we are all sports nuts and we love talking about sports, I don't know if I have the physical capacity to like break down some guy from Tulane State and if his speed or his RAS score is going to translate to NFL ability. I love that. I'm wrong a lot about just normal things, so I'm not going to dip my toe into the water of like NFL prospect.
What's beautiful about it though, Declan, is they're wrong a lot too. Yes. I'm wrong a lot. Everyone's wrong a lot. It's just a guessing game. It's a complete crapshoot.
It really is. So up to number 3 would be what? Probably, obviously, you're swapping this first round pick. I would assume the next 2 future first-round picks, so 24 through 25, right? Probably at the very least.
I think Thor, you had mentioned Thor earlier. He put out a tweet earlier today, I think.
Yeah.
And what it would roughly cost. So, again, when you look at like draft pick, like charts or whatever, right? So to get up to number 3, that's worth 2,200 points, right?
Yep.
Just our first pick and our 3rd round pick, so 87, is about 915. So he estimates that you need to do both of those plus the next 2 first round picks, which is heavy. You can maybe get away with Danielle Hunter or something like that
Right.
in there, but I don't see why the Cardinals would do that because they're clearly in rebuild mode. So Hunter doesn't really do much for you. So yeah, you're looking at multiple first round picks there, 3 first round picks and a third. That's a lot.
So where I'm at with this, because last year the Vikings basically ran back their roster and then also had little to no contributions from last year's rookie class. Caleb Evans showed some flashes. Brian Asamoah showed flashes, but obviously Lewis Cine had the injury. Andrew Booth was off the field for the most part. They achieved 13 wins with running it back. And, as much as fun as that was last season and the fourth quarter comebacks and whatnot, probably not achievable that you can continuing, run it back. And they've kind of shown in this offseason that they want to cut bait on these veterans and kind of start making their own roster, if you will. So I don't think Kwesi, if he does a trade up to number 3, I would be pretty shocked. As much as someone who loves to, from the Wall Street background and buy stocks and whatnot, I think he'd be much more interested in moving up a few spots, trying to figure out what he wants to do there instead of giving up 3 future first round picks basically to find their next quarterback. And as much as even I've consumed all these draft and mock experts, it doesn't seem like none of these quarterbacks they're not Andrew Luck status. They're not Burrow. They're not Herbert. They're not previous quarterbacks that when they were mostly going to be perennial top 5 picks that they were also can't miss prospects. Teams are always desperate for quarterbacks. So guys like CJ Stroud, are now viewed as a potential number 1 overall pick. Like, is CJ Stroud as good of a prospect as Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert was? Probably not, but because it's the draft and quarterbacks are always needed, the supply is the demand is going to be even higher. So I'm probably out. I'm probably out on that. I'd much rather than probably keep the 23rd overall pick or explore other options.
So let me float something by you, because this is something we've talked off camera about, but it's all about figuring out the future. And so would you entertain a trade back from 23 where you get another first? So you're trading back pretty far to get a 24 first, and then you have the ammo to move up 4 guys who are more can't miss prospects in Caleb Williams and Drake, or is it Drake May? Yeah, Drake May in 2024.
Yeah, I would be much more interested in stockpiling assets that if things don't go according to plan next year, record wise, right? Like the Vikings just never ever tank, and they're never near a top 5 pick. What I mean, they've been in the top 10 twice in like the last 12 years, essentially. Like outside of the Matt Khalil pick, I forget if Anthony Barr was like
I think he was 9.
Was 9, right? So they are never like a perennial top 5 pick team. Now, like the Colts, who never picked in the top, near the top of the draft when they had the Peyton Manning era, were so bad to get Andrew Luck. You could say it still worked out for them, even though Luck retired early. They have never been a team like that. So I would rather them probably be a team that if they don't, injuries happen and they only win 5 or 6 games or 7 games, they're slotted somewhere between, 10 and 18. If they had a future asset that they acquired in this year's draft to then move up, yes, I would be much more interested in that. I'm also interested, to be honest, in obtaining some type of second round pick this year. It doesn't involve you trading in to the second round, right? And the most logical step for that would be you trading out of 23 and probably acquiring a day 2 pick in round 2 for this year.
Yeah.
I'm really going back to, potentially trading up. There's only 2 players I would do that for.
Okay.
Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. I'm actually more of a CJ Stroud guy. But to your point, I mean, you lose out first round picks until 2026, right? I mean, because it'd be 2024. No, yeah, 2024, 2025. That's hard to stomach. Now, is it worth it to have the QB of the future, potential QB1, right? I think CJ Stroud can be that guy. I don't know if he will be, but I think he can be. But the hard part is it's a guessing game. So you have to really trust your coaches to develop this kid. He's young. He's clearly got a good arm. He's very accurate. He can move around a little. So is he worth that? All of that? That I can't answer for you. But I
think there's another element to this, though.
What do you say?
There's another element to this. That if the Vikings are that aggressive in moving up for a quarterback at 3, like I think that really frustrates Kirk Cousins in his camp. Like, we know that he got allegedly upset from the Kellen Mond pick, and I think he'd be fine if they took a quarterback at 23 where they're at, or maybe moved up a little bit. But going up to 3 to draft a guy, I just don't know if that'll sit well with Kirk Cousins. Which
Even if
then
he's gone after a year anyway, so who cares? Like, I mean, worst case scenario, you have a guy who's unhappy for 1 year. Best case, or actually worst case scenario is you have to cut him. Like, he just won't play for you and you just have to cut him because he won't waive a no trade clause. That would obviously be the worst case scenario. But hopefully he'd be amendable to a trade and maybe we can get a little compensation back.
Yeah, I think the writing on the wall of this is the last year of Kirk. And it's no secret how, Mackie, Judd, and myself have obviously felt. I think we're all different in our level of belief or criticizing level of
Sure.
Kirk Cousins. But
where's your level?
I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of him. I thought last year he changed a lot of his perception and narrative. I really did. But then the issue was he throws that check down on 4th down in the last play of the game. And it's just like all the good that he made was wiped away to classic Kirk. Like he roboted and defaulted back to old Kirk, which was like, if he throws an incompletion to Jefferson or just, throws something in the middle of the field that's picked or just nowhere near someone, I'd rather him do that than take that check down. But I'm ready to move on. Like, I'm ready for them to try again at a 1st round pick for a quarterback here pretty soon. And if it's this year in the draft, I could be talked into it again, though. I don't think it's worth going up the multiple spots. If someone like Levis is there at 16, 17, different story. I could probably be talked into that a little bit more. But I'm ready personally to just move on from the Kirk Cousins era. You got to find someone else. It hasn't worked. And just try again something else with a different quarterback.
Well, Kirk, I think, kind of knows the writings on the wall. I mean, we had Doogie on our show probably about a month ago now, and one thing he was talking about a lot was that moment was it the Affinity Bank or whatever? He held like a charity event, and he just seemed really, sentimental about his time here, but like visibly almost distraught's probably too harsh of a word, but you could see that he knows the end is near, and kind of appreciating that kind of stuff.
Going back to on your guys' show, some of the reckless speculation that you guys have was some of the 49ers talk. Now, granted, let's say that Kirk's still here. We don't actually trade him over to the 49ers, but maybe they need a guy to put him over the top. They have Nick Bosa, but they don't really have somebody on the other side of him. So let's say they're interested in Daniel Hunter to try to get them over to that Super Bowl. And they're willing to give us Trey Lance. Is that a route that you would maybe even prefer, where maybe we can do a 1-for-1 trade there? Now we have a little bit of a gap at edge, but take 23, trade back still, right? And kind of stockpile and still maybe get your young QB of the future, because we've alluded to on this show before. Lance is actually younger than Levis and Hendon Hooker, right? Some of the quarterbacks that have been linked to us. So you still have a nice young kid, a lot of potential, and hopefully you can mold him for a year, which hopefully he doesn't need that much more molding, but you have him for a year under Kirk, and to learn the offense that Kevin O'Connell implements.
So I think between Mackie, Judd, and myself, I have been the biggest one that's been just out on Trey Lance. He does nothing for me. Have
you seen his hairline, by the way?
No, is it bad? Is it receding?
Well, there's a picture today. It's not great.
Ugh, that's too bad. As someone with really good hair, that's like I'm dead serious when I say this, and I mean it to no fault of anyone else. So when I say it, it offends some people. Balding is like when people say, "What are you scared of?" Balding is a legit fear of mine. I don't have like too many dominant genes that suggest it's going to happen. My dad was bald, but like my mom's hairline is great. My grandfather's hairline was great. My siblings all have good hair. But like a legit fear of mine is balding. Like it's an achievable fear that could happen to you. So luckily it hasn't happened yet.
$10,000, you can ensure it never happens.
That's true. And I would probably do hair implants and not tell anyone that it's hair implants. So I'm out on Trey Lance for a few reasons. Number one, I don't buy the North Dakota State thing. I'm not a fan, as much as I'm not a huge college football and prospect like scouter. Playing up there, even though they're dominant, I think competition matters. And he also just hasn't played a lot of football games since COVID. Like, has he maybe played like 10 quarters of football since he left NDSU or since the pandemic? I've told Mackie and Judd, and both of them are coming off very significant injuries. Obviously, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. I'm interested in Brock Purdy. Give me Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is the more surefire thing there. And if they're willing to play ball, I'd much rather them take Purdy off our hands, or take Purdy off their hands, than you take a chance on him. One's coming off an ankle injury. One's coming off this kind of unique Tommy John syndrome where it's not the same, where it's, I think, a full tear and he's rehabbing, and pitchers have come back quicker on this style of Tommy John than traditional style of Tommy John where it's a full tear. That guy looked a hell of a lot better than Trey Lance ever has. And I understand Shanahan's system is made for basically any quarterback to step in and look somewhat competent. But also, if you're only going to try this for 3 years, right? So Trey Lance has burned 2 years of his rookie contract. Yep. So you get 2 more years and then plus a 5th-year option if you want to pick it up, but it's going to be very expensive, right? Because he was a 2nd overall pick. Well, why don't you just take the same amount and give it to the guy who was the last pick in the draft, who is even cheaper? And if it doesn't work and he's hurt or he's never the same guy, you cut bait and you don't lose anything. I'm much more in the camp. If you're gonna finally figure out this trade for the 49ers and the Vikings, which Purple Daily has done countless episodes on that people love to point out, I would be much more interested in Brock Purdy. I want nothing to do with Trey Lance.
Interesting. I do think you bring up a good point, though, with the Shanahan system. And that's what scares me just in general, because anybody, right, it seems, can step in and look good. But, man, I don't know. I think when I sit there and think about Trey Lance and just like the dynamic ability he would provide at quarterback, I think that for me is intriguing enough to try and see if there's something there. But to your point, Brock Purdy did ball out last year, and I think they beat Philly if he stays healthy. I think he was that good.
I thought so too. I thought if
Ryan's rolling his eyes at us, he's not in on this.
No, I'm good. You can keep Brock Purdy for. There's no chance I want Brock Purdy on this team. No offense to the take there, Declan.
No, it's all good.
I mean, we're sick of Kirk Cousins, and you have Brock Purdy over here, who's. I mean, again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that. Like, I like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a fine quarterback. Like, I don't think Brock Purdy's upside is any higher than what Kirk is at his peak. So, like, if Kirk's not good enough to get us over the hump, Brock Purdy's not going to be good enough unless we surround him with an amazing team like he had in San Francisco. I don't think he was the reason they were winning games, and I do not think that they're going to beat the Eagles with him. Maybe, but I just don't think so. Granted, what they had at quarterback was just pitiful. So, I mean, there is a chance, but I think that he doesn't make his teammates better. He's okay running a system. I want a guy who can be dynamic and make plays and make people better. To your point, Trey Lance hasn't shown us he can do that at all. So I don't think that might not necessarily be the right answer, but I like the upside that it provides. But yeah, he has a ways to go, I think, to be a competent NFL quarterback. So we'll see.
Let's shift gears a little bit, because we can talk about Kirk Cousins and this quarterback fiasco until we find the quarterback of the future. But I want to get your thoughts, Declan, on just the overarching Vikings offseason thus far. What have been your main takeaways? Are you happy with it? Because I think as with news kind of like dying off and it just kind of being that dead period, I feel like fans maybe aren't as happy with how the offseason has gone. They wanted to see maybe a little more free agent signings, or obviously they haven't addressed the wide receiver position. But what are you thinking so far with 2 weeks to go to the draft?
So, yeah, this is the time of year where it gets a little quiet because, like, the waves of free agency have now cooled off and you're a little less than 2 weeks from the draft. So things are kind of so quiet and teams are more focusing on that than looking at other waves of free agents. I've liked what they've done so far. I wouldn't say it's been like a home run or like they have been sneakily one of the best off seasons of the NFL. I think it's been middle of the pack, and considering that they had like next to no cap space, how they were able to finagle this cap space by releasing veterans, kicking, Kirk Cousins' void year down the can and putting that in future seasons. It's been fine. I think the highlight for me is it's not a player. I think Brian Flores is kind of the lead talker there of the best thing that they did this offseason, right? Like, Byron Murphy Jr. is a nice cornerback and you bought low on him. You didn't overpay for him, and maybe he fits and becomes a solid top cornerback for you. Obviously, the Josh Norris signing, people were just confused because it was the first big domino. and he's a blocking tight end. And it's kind of like, that's going to be the first move you make, but it does make some sense, especially if the Vikings want to be more effective at running the football and just being a little bit more, the illusion of complexity that KOC likes to talk about on offense. And he kind of provides some of that. But I think Flores is your main talker here. Like, that dude turned around a Dolphins team that was horrible, made them into one of the best defense in the league. Obviously the things behind the scenes with him were rightfully justified, and things ended probably prematurely than it should have in Miami. But that dude is younger. He knows what he's doing with defenses. And I think obviously a lot of Vikings fans aren't asking the Vikings defense to return at the peak of Zimmer era, where they were a perennial top 10 shutdown defense. They're asking for a league competent defense, right? I mean, they've been now 30th, 32nd, 31st in points allowed or something, and been one of the worst defense in the NFL the last 3 years. Vikings fans are asking them to be 17th in points allowed, and, maybe 15th in yards, and getting more sacks and creating more turnovers and whatnot. So can Flores do something? And even if it's just the stepping stone, right? Like, if Flores, which is probably what he's doing, I know his press conference said he's not thinking about it, but like, if this is a leverage job for him to get a head coaching gig by a year from now, that's fine. Because I want to see him try to turn around this defense, and Kwesi kind of giving his input on it. I think that's been fine. Like, if you're asking me to give me a grade, I think it's been like a B-. I think it's been above average work. It certainly isn't like extraordinary work, but given what they had for their circumstances, I think they've done a pretty solid job.
That's a good summary to me. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. I feel very similar to that, but wanted to get your thoughts on it. You mentioned Brian Flores, in just like getting the Vikings defense to just a level of competency. Is there something that in the draft that you're looking for us to maybe look or like try and do to get to that? Like, are you a first round corner type of guy? I know you said you're not a draft expert, but you have feelings about where the team should go.
So I think Vikings fans will just lose their minds if it's corner, because it's been like the 7th
Mike
corner
Zimmer
that'll be
won't.
taken in 10 years. Yeah, he'll just be chuckling from wherever he has on his ranch, I'm sure. I would actually like to see them take a edge rusher or some type of pass rusher. I think that's been something that they can try to build on here. They are taking I think what's risky about what they've done this offseason, and I don't fault them too much for this, but they are banking that outside of Byron Murphy Jr., who's been their top cornerback here, everyone else behind him, defensive backs wise, and excluding Harrison Smith, are going to be rookies or second-year players. And that is a big risk in a pass-heavy type of NFL system that everyone is playing now, that you're just going to rely on Andrew Booth and a Caleb Evans and maybe another rookie cornerback, or another safety that can step in here, or whoever it is, basically, that can say, yeah, they're going to be just fine here. Like, those are raw players that could be completely exposed, right? I think of kind of towards the Leslie Frazier era, where every team was picking apart the Vikings pass defense because it was just terrible. And maybe there is some diamonds in the rough, right? Like, maybe Lewis Seen, that injury was catastrophic, but he bounces back and he was the player he was at Georgia. If Andrew Booth stays healthy, he should be really good. There's just a lot of ifs on the defensive backside. So how about you instead of like taking another cornerback early, you find an edge rusher that can sack the cornerback, right? Like, last year, their plan was, because their defensive backs still weren't really good last year, that can Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter get after the quarterback enough? And Zadarius in the first half was legitimately one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Danielle might have not had the like eye-popping moments, or even eye test wise looked as strong as he was, but he was still pretty dang good pressure wise. Can you find something of a 2-headed, 3-headed monster where you have the next Danielle Hunter, where you have another edge rusher that can be really good for you? I think that would be their best bet at making that defense a lot better overnight. That's what I would like to see them do at the draft defensively. We'll see what they do offensively, but I think defensively, if they want to go a route, I would probably lean edge. That's what I would like to see them do.
Yeah, I mean, we did bring in Marcus Davenport, half sack man himself from last year,
Yeah.
but he did get quite a few pressures, right? So hopefully he can convert those to sacks. But yeah, I mean, especially if we move on from Zadarius, like, that whole situation is just weird. Like, I totally agree with you. Edge is definitely a priority need if we move on from him before the draft, or if we plan to move on from him after the draft, and that'll be a tall tale sign, right? Hey, we went and drafted your replacement. But I do agree with you, though. But I think from a different position. I think defensive tackle, a 3-4 D end, a 3-4 D end or a 3 tech, right? That's the position they would play in this defense, depending on what look we're giving the offense. But I think that would be something, because the one thing quarterbacks hate the most is interior pressure, and we get zero of that. And the one person who could create that, Dalvin Tomlinson's now gone. So where can we get that interior pressure? Mozzie Smith, we've talked about him on this show, Keanu Benton, these guys are going to be able to get after the quarterback from the interior and create some havoc, making them have to go to the outsides where Davenport, Hunter, and Smith would have an opportunity to, get those sack numbers up. So that's what I'd like to see, but we'll see. Cornerback would be fine as well, but I know Matt's wanting that wide receiver round one, aren't you?
I was, until I was told today that none of these guys are first round wide receivers, except, and I'm like, okay, get out of here. I don't agree with that. I'd still take them, especially maybe they're not top 15 wide receivers, but where the Vikings are sitting, even in a potential trade back, maybe to late 20s, I would take a wide receiver there. In fact, I would take an edge too, because we're talking about premium positions that would have a 5-year deal of team control. You just don't get that. And so those are the corner, edge, quarterback, and wide receiver. Any 4 of those, you'd be hard pressed to find me upset after draft night if we got one of those positions. Just
back and get them.
Just given the cost control in the team control for 5 years there.
On the defensive tackle part, I mean, I feel like everyone, when the first round comes around, right, they want the wide receiver or an edge rusher. They want the sexy thing, where sometimes the surefire thing is the offensive tackle, like Christian Darrisaw, or finding a really good defensive tackle who might not get the sack numbers and get the all the glitter and glam, but he will clog up the middle of the lane. He'll make life a lot harder on quarterbacks and running backs that are running through the A gap and stuff. So the defensive tackle does make sense. They really haven't had, I mean, Peak Linval was obviously a monster and a great player for them. But previously to that, right, I mean, they had the Williams wall, and there was a 10-year run when I was in middle school, high school, college, where you couldn't run against the Vikings defense. You just couldn't. Yeah. And over the last 4 years, unfortunately, every team has basically been able to run up the middle against the Vikings defense. So defensive tackle, absolutely. I wouldn't be too upset by that. I just think too many Vikings fans have PTSD with first round cornerbacks, and it will just have them pulling out their heads. And that could be them finding a stud corner. It won't matter to them, because it's been the 7th time it's happened.
Right.
Back to the Williams wall, man. I swear there was I'm going to get the game number wrong, but it was 30, or it was a super long time where they didn't even allow a 100-yard rusher.
I think they have the NFL record, right? Or at the time they had the NFL record. I think it was.
Wouldn't surprise me if 80, it's still there.
Yeah, with from 06 to 2010, I think they held the NFL record, man. Yeah, it was insane. They couldn't run against them.
Man, I missed that. I missed that. I missed that Williams wall.
But and it wasn't just the run block or the run stuffing. Kevin Williams got after the quarterback too, right? And that allowed Jared Allen and Ray Edwards and Brian Robeson to get their pressures and their sack numbers up too.
Edwards.
Well, he had a good year with us. He had a good year with us.
I know.
So
wonder how his boxing.
Boxing didn't really work out.
Boxing, can't say much about the boxing career, but I mean that's what I'm talking about, right? Though is we talked about the other show that we had a couple shows ago. We talked about Shamar Stephen and how he was Mr. Fundamental or whatever. And I'm not saying we need Mr. Fundamental. I think we've had enough of those guys on the defensive line over the years. I think we need to find somebody who can be a star, be the next Chris Jones, be the next. And obviously Aaron Donald's a high bar to hit, but be one of these guys that can truly be a disruptor in the interior. And so I think there's a couple guys that could do that in Smith and Benton.
Well, we gotta.
Go ahead. And just to the point of that wall that they had for a long time, Vikings fans got spoiled. Even post Williams wall, right? Linval Joseph was a monster for them, and now finally for basically the first time in 20 years, the teams have been running up against them, and it's been a huge problem. Where at first it was oh yeah, you're not going to run against the Vikings. Good luck. won't happen. But for the last few years, it's been quite the opposite.
Brutal.
We'll find out here in a couple weeks. I'm sure the rumors will continue to swirl. Nobody will know. For your sake, I hope that they pick on the first round, because I know you guys have an event at Park Tavern in St. Louis Park, and it probably wouldn't be very fun if they trade out of the first round.
Dude, last year it was just freeze. We were freezing our asses off. Like, and also like it was raining and it was windy. And at one point we had space heaters on me. My gloves almost caught on fire because I was putting my hand too close to a space heater. Like, at least we're indoors this time. Like, and luckily we'll be inside. But yes, as much as we would love to be on for 4 hours, which we did last year. And the only thing that would be a pro trade up for me is like, okay, then it happens quick. We're not waiting like 3 hours for the pick, and then it just gets traded out to 32 and you're waiting for another 90 minutes.
So, and how exciting would that for you and the crowd be? Oh my God, we're at 3 and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. We're looking at maybe one of these guys. That would be insane.
Content wise, as much as I just crapped in that idea for like the first 10 minutes of this podcast, content wise, it would be a home run decision. It'd be the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
I think last year when you had your guys' show at Surly, I was there because I used to live right next to there, and I was there for maybe the first 10, 12 picks, and I was like, no, I gotta go.
I don't blame you.
As soon as that trade happened, I'm out. Good luck, boys.
No offense taken for leaving that at the time. Luckily, so many awesome people stayed, and it was crazy. It was a blast. But yes, I don't blame you one bit. At least this time, we'll be parked indoors, and hopefully. I mean, I took the dog for like a 3-mile walk outside earlier this evening, and hopefully it's warmer weather by the time the draft rolls around too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for hopping on tonight.
Yeah, man.
I'm sure things will start to pick up. You got some Twins that have lost a couple in a row, and
we'll
early,
see.
but who cares? But
we'll see.
In the Wolves play incoming, so it's going to be a chaotic couple weeks, but I appreciate you finding time and hopping on with us. For everybody listening, you can find us on Wednesday at Lake Monster Brewing in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's supposed to be 78 degrees out, nice. And we're doing a little monthly hangout there. And Alec Lewis of The Athletic will be joining us to talk more Vikings football. What's the team kind of planning? What's he hearing? We'll get all the scoops on Wednesday. So until next time, everybody, Skol Vikes.